Today we're breaking down Hyperbitcoinization. What comes after fiat? Simplified. Welcome to BitcoinBytesHQ, simple Bitcoin explainers. This is educational content only, not financial advice. Let's go. Imagine a world where people save, sign long-term contracts, and think about wealth using Bitcoin instead of national currencies. Not because anyone announced a new system, but because people gradually trusted one tool more than another. That idea sounds dramatic until you remember that money has changed this way before. Hyperbitcoinization describes a scenario where Bitcoin becomes the dominant form of money by absorbing the monetary role that fiat currencies and other assets play today. The important part is how this happens, not through laws or mandates, but through millions of individual decisions quietly compounding over time. A helpful way to think about this is how older forms of money fade from everyday use. Gold didn't stop existing when paper money became common. It just stopped being the unit people used to measure prices, wages, and debts. The old system remained in the background while a more convenient one took center stage. Money only works as long as people trust it to do a few basic jobs. It needs to store value, make prices understandable, and settle obligations reliably. When confidence in those jobs weakens, people don't usually protest, they adapt. They spend the weaker money faster, they save in something else. Over time, they stop thinking in the old unit altogether. We can see this behavior already, especially in places where monetary instability is part of daily life. In parts of Africa, mobile money systems like M-Pesa became widely used because they were faster and more reliable than traditional banking. In other regions, people have gone even more improvised. In Nigeria, prepaid mobile phone airtime has at times been treated like money, not because it's perfect, but because it's transferable, scarce, and trusted more than rapidly devaluing cash in everyday transactions. In Venezuela, the pattern appears at a different scale. Many people still earn wages in the local currency, but then immediately convert it into something more stable. It's often described as having a full-time job earning money and a second job protecting it from devaluation. That constant effort is a signal that money has stopped doing its job. Bitcoin enters this picture not as an ideology, but as an option. Its supply rules don't change based on emergencies, elections, or policy shifts. They're fixed, predictable, and visible to everyone. That makes Bitcoin attractive, first as a place to store value, not necessarily as something you spend every day. As trust grows, Bitcoin begins competing not just with cash, but with anything people use to protect themselves from bad money. Real estate, stocks, and even collectibles often carry extra value because people are trying to escape inflation or uncertainty. Some economists describe this as monetary premium, value that exists mainly because people don't trust money itself. In theory, Bitcoin doesn't destroy that value, it absorbs it. During this phase, price movement is intense. Volatility isn't a flaw here, it's a side effect of discovery. When an asset is small relative to global capital, each new wave of adoption moves the price dramatically. As Bitcoin grows and more people hold it for long-term savings and reserves, those swings naturally begin to shrink. Stability doesn't start adoption, it emerges naturally as adoption grows. With that foundation in place, let's look at what hyperbitcoinization would and would not actually look like if it continues.
One common misunderstanding is that hyperbitcoinization means fiat currencies instantly disappear. That's unlikely. Even today, multiple forms of money exist at the same time. What changes is which one people treat as primary. Fiat may still circulate, just as metal coins and local currencies do now, but increasingly in the background. Another misconception is that this transition would be centrally planned or coordinated. In reality, monetary shifts tend to look messy and uneven. Some people move early, others resist. Some adopt Bitcoin as savings but still spend fiat. Others skip steps entirely. The process isn't synchronized, it's organic. This idea shows up often in the work of thinkers like Saifedean Ammous, who emphasizes that good money isn't adopted because it's declared superior, but because it outperforms alternatives over time. People don't need to understand monetary theory to make these choices. They just need to notice that one option protects their effort better than another. Michael Saylor often frames this shift as capital flowing towards certainty. When money is unstable, people are forced into risk, not because they want it, but because standing still guarantees loss. Bitcoin offers an asset with no central issuer and no supply surprises. For some, that predictability is worth tolerating short-term volatility. Max Kaiser tends to describe hyperbitcoinization in more dramatic language, but the underlying observation is simple. When trust breaks down, people migrate. Not all at once, and not for the same reasons, but steadily. Monetary systems don't collapse in a single moment. They hollow out as usage declines. If hyperbitcoinization were to occur, Bitcoin's role would likely shift. Early on, it behaves like a volatile asset. Later, it starts acting more like infrastructure. As adoption widens, volatility diminishes because fewer people are trading it as a speculative bet and more people are holding it as a long-term reference point. At that stage, Bitcoin wouldn't feel exciting. It would feel boring, which is exactly what you want from money. Prices would make sense again. Long-term planning would be easier. The constant need to hedge, swap, and protect value would fade into the background. A tiny next step is simply to observe behavior. Watch what people choose to save in during periods of instability. Notice how institutions discuss reserves and risk. Learn how monetary competition unfolds. No buying required. Whether or not hyperbitcoinization ever fully happens, the behavior driving it is already visible. When money stops working, people don't wait for permission. They move towards what helps them preserve their time and effort. Bitcoin is simply one candidate in that ongoing process, but it's the first digital one that doesn't rely on trust in an issuer. That's why the idea keeps coming back. Not because it's guaranteed, but because it reflects how people actually behave when incentives shift. That's hyperbitcoinization, what comes after fiat, simplified. If this helped, like, share, and subscribe for more Bitcoin explainers. Drop your biggest takeaway in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts. See you in the next one. Thanks.